Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Tonight we'll be providing an update on the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, which apparently is some type of trial that's going on.
Never heard of it.
So, I'm not familiar.
Some people are in a dispute of some type. So we'll get started with introductions. Jeff?
My name is Jeff Pincin. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Delaware and Pennsylvania. And leave a comment or question. May respond in future episodes. And if I hadn't become a counselor, I really wanted to be a movie producer for failed actors. But they're failed actors for a reason, and therefore money doesn't come in, so no real job opportunities there. You know, it's kind of a declining career from the start.
Plus, you have to have like a significant amount of money beforehand.
Yeah, that was kind of tough too. Yeah. So
it's terrible.
So that failed dream happened, or didn't happen rather, and I settled on a counselor.
It's a rough road.
Yeah.
Tough break.
Yeah.
Mike?
All right. My name is Mike Smith, also licensed professional counselor in the state of Delaware, specializing in narrative therapy and geek therapy, and I am a self-styled expert in all things geek. If I had not become a counselor, I think what I really had wanted to do at one point was to be a veterinarian, but a very specific veterinarian who specializes only in insect bites and stings. And the problem with that, though, is it's so specialized that your cases have to be all over the place. There's a lot of travel involved.
Unless you have a high-profile client, you can make a lot of money with one.
Well, yeah, but then,
Could have been Lassie, maybe, that you...
I mean, to the stars, it would be great, but, that'd still be traveling. I mean, you have to fly to different countries to help, famous dogs in places. I mean, it'd be nice, but, the travel was just like, I like to travel for fun, but not for work. I was just going to be
you don't want to
on
mix
the road
it
all the time.
Yeah.
It just wasn't going to be worth it. So I ended up, giving that dream up and becoming a counselor.
That's rough, Mike. Sorry to hear that.
Shattered dreams. So when we last talked about the Heard Depp or Depp Heard, whichever you prefer, trial, we were on day 10.
Yep. That was back in day 10.
And it was, it's gone in kind of a predictable direction in one sense, but in another sense, there have been some surprises. Because right now, as we're making this, day 22 just wrapped up. So it's the rebuttal for the plaintiff. So Johnny Depp testified today. And then next week, we're going to see, tomorrow. This will be over for next week. Tomorrow, we're going to see the rebuttal from Amber Heard because she countersued. She also gets a rebuttal.
Yeah. Okay.
So then the case should go to the jury Friday. And then I would presume some type of verdict pretty soon. I would hope it wouldn't be too long, but it seems like a very easy case as far as what they're doing. But I don't know. I mean, they haven't had the benefit of all the commentary on this case.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, everybody's talking about this case. We're talking about it.
Right.
It's all over everything.
I think one of the advantages of seeing it on social media and all these different media products is you get perspective, like their histories and kind of what they said, like in the UK trial.
Right. People connect many different events. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just a lot of history that if you're sitting in a jury, you probably didn't know a lot about Johnny Depp other than Jack Sparrow and all that. And
that's probably why they chose
Jump
those
Street.
people.
21. But Amber Heard, they might never have heard of because she's just not that popular.
And maybe that's probably why they chose those people for that jury, perhaps.
I think this is an 8-person jury, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's
a civil trial in Virginia is a reduced jury size compared to criminal cases. I think that's right, but either way, it's a group of people.
If the jury is anything like everyone else at the trial, they'll draw out the time that they're going to talk about the case. So maybe it'll be another few weeks of them just talking about it in private and no one will know anything. That would go along with the trial.
Yeah, a few days maybe next week, it'll be Friday of next week. Then we get a verdict. But
maybe they just
I'd be drawing it out a little bit too much though.
I actually, defamation is one of those tricky types of cases because it infringes on free speech. Now, there should be some limits on free speech, and it's not the government telling you can't do it. But, somebody's taking your money away. That would dissuade somebody from exercising free speech.
Right.
So it's a limit. And historically, they've been frowned upon. There's no two ways about it. Courts don't like defamation cases. And it really has to be something egregious.
Right.
Especially if you're talking about a public figure.
Yeah.
I think it would just be hysterical if the jury came back in like 20 minutes. 0-0. Can we go home?
It sounds reasonable, though.
I mean,
Send a
I
clear
couldn't blame them.
I wouldn't blame him either. Like, no, this is a wash. Like,
We heard all your points. The internet has heard everything, just like you wanted, and now let's go home. Can we all agree? You both did wrong things, maybe one more than other. Let's just go home.
like at a zero exchange of things, Johnny Depp still comes out on top
Yes. Yeah.
because he's still like his reputation is being restored, and a lot of support is coming back for him.
Yeah. I think the only thing that could derail him now is very improbable, and that's if the jury sides with Amber in some financial way. I don't think they can. I don't see any route to get there right now, but who knows? Again, they've been isolated. So they might look at Depp as arrogant, and they might see Amber as polite. That's not what I see, but
Right.
I mean, and they might have invested in one professional over another, like the mental health people. They might have thought, though, this one definitely is telling the truth. I don't know.
You know, it was interesting today in the mail. We got this, and we never get these things. I don't know why it was today. But I don't remember the last time I've ever gotten one of these. Like one of those cologne sample things, like where you scratch it or something, you can
The
smell the
scratch
cologne.
and sniff cologne sample.
But it was Johnny Depp was the I don't know, spokesperson or the picture for this, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty bold. Like I'm sure that they had to plan this well in advance of the trial, but nonetheless, they knew this was coming up, and they still chose, we're sending this out to thousands, millions. I don't know.
They were trying to influence you, Jeff.
They probably were.
Trying because
They
they knew you
thought
were
it-
going to be on doing a talk about this.
This
and
has
they were
got to be
trying
some kind of conspiracy then. Yeah.
I remember the commercial that Johnny Depp did for that cologne.
Yeah.
It's a cologne perfume commercial. They never make sense
Right.
at
They're
all
so weird.
because you're trying to sell a smell on TV. Like we don't have smell-o-vision, so they just get outlandish and weird. And it was just Johnny Depp digging a hole in the desert in black and white. It's weird.
It was a picture from that commercial that was on this cologne ad, but it was a standalone thing. It's not like it was part of a magazine or part of other things. It was by itself that they mailed out, and it made me wonder: they trying to send some kind of message that like they support him or something like that, or like I don't know. Maybe it was cheap for them to have him now. Nobody else was taking a chance. I don't know.
Maybe it was sent out by Amber Heard's team. Going, like, see, Johnny Depp smells.
Maybe it smelled bad. I didn't smell it, but maybe it smells awful.
If those cards were left over from a while ago and the perfume degraded, it could smell really terrible now. And there's like, see, that's what Johnny Depp smells like. Be on Amber's side.
Yeah. So they send it to Delaware and hope that somebody has an opinion.
So
Although it could just be getting around to getting to Delaware.
That's true.
So when we left this case at day 10, where were we then? That was Johnny Depp had testified by that point, right?
Yeah. I think he had just wrapped up his testimony.
And we were eagerly awaiting to see what Amber Heard would sound like, what she would do.
Yeah.
But of course, Johnny still had to finish, I guess, with other witnesses. Had some other witnesses before Amber came up to bat. So let's start there then. So at that point, I think with Johnny wrapping up direct and cross and redirect, I felt like he gained some points. Yeah. I think he gained more than he lost. I mean, cross-examination was rough because of all those messages that where he used obscenities. I think that hurt him.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, in terms of like inconsistencies, he did okay. I think for that phase.
Yeah, some of those text messages, like the ones that prosecutors are really focused on, with he wants to burn her, he wants to drown her, he wants to, all those things, and which it's completely word for word bit. And we talked about this in the last video. It's word for word a bit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah. All you need on the jury is one geek to be able to be like, I know what that is. And then he's going to have to explain it to everybody else in the jury room, but he's still going to be like, no, that's not a thing. Like, that's not being, nasty toward her. It's a joke. Like, it's from a movie. Like,
But even if you take that out, he does seem like he's not always a very polite guy, like with his writing. Right. Not in court. He seems pretty polite in court, but
as evidenced by his good rapport with most of the people there, or at least being able to get along with them better than Amber.
I noticed when he comes in the morning, he shakes hands with the cops that stand outside. each one, and
The bailiffs. And
bailiff. Well, the bailiffs are police officers. I guess both are there.
Yeah, probably.
They might be bailiffs, but either way, the law enforcement. There's tons of them, right? Because he's making a mess of Virginia with this trial. But and he makes eye contact with everybody except for Amber Heard, of course, because she won't see his eyes again or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think he did okay. Then Amber Heard, gets her chance, and no surprise, it's a long, direct examination. With a whole big story, I think something about growing up with horses.
Huge story.
Yeah, and then kind of having to hustle for acting jobs, doing 10 auditions a day, and changing in the back of the bus. And all right, I mean, she didn't draw it out. It's like, okay, then we get to like being all struck with Johnny, the kiss and the shower scene of Rum Diary.
Rum Diaries, yeah.
And how I felt like she portrayed him as a little creepy and weird. That was like the first time I felt like, okay, now we're getting into something. Mm-hmm. The rest of it's just, I'm great, look at me, I'm a millionaire, whatever. And then she starts getting into that story, and you can see a little bit of
a change.
Yeah, a little bit of anger, resentment, and also like, I thought it was strange she was distancing herself from a relationship that she was in. Like, oh, there's this weird guy who's chasing me. You mean the guy you married?
Yeah, the guy you spent years with, that you married, that you lived with. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just clean it up.
Clean it up.
Yeah.
She also did go on about how interesting he was.
Right.
Like when she first met him, like how they talked about, they just talked for a long time, and like she was starstruck with him, but she also was like this person is intelligent, like he has a lot of the same interests that I do, and they talked about things like books and intelligent things that they both were interested in, and then it was like, oh yeah, but he's creepy.
Yeah, and then
but you really like it.
And then the gifts. She kept talking about like how he would send expensive gifts, and she rejected some. Like he was like some type of stalker. And she didn't say that, but that's what you kind of were left with. Like, wow, what a jerk. Yeah. But then she fell in love. It was magical. It was perfect.
Yeah, it made me question, which ones did you reject? Were they
the expensive ones, apparently?
Well, no, it was the non-name brand ones. Like, this is expensive, but it's not
quite what I want.
It's like, well, these shoes are expensive, but they're not Manila Blahniks, so like I'm gonna have to send them back. No,
it would make sense that she would distance herself from him, right? Or say the negative things about him, of course, but she's not real good at assuming that she's fabricating some things here. She's not very good at fabricating it, like getting the whole package there. Like, let me distance myself fully from him and say how bad he is. Instead, let me say how bad he is, but also how great he is. You're not helping yourself, which if that's the truth, then great, that's the truth. But you're also, you countersued him and you're in this whole lawsuit, so maybe you should do something to help yourself?
It also to me is a bit of she didn't read the handbook for Abuse Victim 101. Right?
She didn't take the college class.
She didn't take the college class in what it was like to be an actual abuse victim. And I'm not saying that she wasn't. I wasn't there. I wasn't a fly on the wall. I'm doing speculating, but the way she tells it, it's not like that. I've talked to plenty of people who are actual victims of abuse, and when they talk about the early part of the relationship, it's glorious. It's amazing. They don't give it any kind of like creepy. The most they give is like, well, if I knew then what I knew now, right. I would do things differently, but I didn't, and it was just amazing. Like this, the early part of the relationship is always just insanely good, super great.
One big honeymoon.
Yeah, and then it starts to fall downhill. But the way she's telling it is, she's trying to, build in foreshadowing. And she's trying to show that, I was thinking he was a little creepy even back then and things like, so I was wary. I was on my guard. Like, why would you be on your guard?
Yeah. It doesn't also fit with the magical perfection part. She was awestruck. He's a wealthy guy. I mean, that seems like a simple enough explanation just to put out there and move forward.
Right.
But she complicated the whole thing with the, he was a little weird. You should know he was a little weird. I also thought that when Johnny testified, he wasn't willing to concede a whole lot, but he did concede some. He should have conceded more, but he conceded some. Like one of the things he did that aggravated me was trying to separate himself. We talked about this before, from other drug users. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm paraphrasing and kind of exaggerating here, hyperbole, but it's like, they're just seeking pleasure. They're in the gutter with the heroin needles. I had this pain I'm trying to fix, and that's much different than what they do.
I would say, to be fair, having worked in substance use for a long time, that's actually a common thing. Like, I've heard everybody under the sun do and sometimes it's like, well, yeah, I use heroin, but I don't do it under a bridge. I make sure I do it in a motel room. Like, I make sure there's somebody else there. I'm not that bad. I'm not like those people.
I'm not a monster.
There's a very big tendency to minimize and shuffle things off and try to explain why I'm different from everyone else. People are like I'm not. I've had people tell me like, I'm not your average alcoholic. I drink a lot. I'm like, okay, well, how much is a lot? Like a case of beer a day. I'm like, okay, how many fifths do you have? Do you drink as well? Like how many handles on top of that? And they're like, no, I just did 12-pack of beer. I'm like, okay, well, I've had people who are drinking like 5 times that much in a day. Like you're not that different in the habits. Where you are different is in your experience. Mm-hmm. It's your own experience. When Johnny was trying to minimize, like that's a classic thing. Like that is perfectly in line with someone who struggles with addiction.
And he connected it like with a chain to his childhood. Like it's like just this caused my pain and this solved my pain. Like there's no like adolescence or in your 20s. Like what? We're just. Okay. It seemed very forced. And I thought that he opened up an opportunity for Amber to come in and be like, well, I'm going to concede where I did things wrong. But instead, she kind of followed his lead and took it to an extreme where she wouldn't give an inch no matter what contradictory testimony there was, even if it was her own testimony from before. It was like, nope, this is the way it is now. I'm not giving an inch on anything. Oh, that witness who's very credible said something. They're lying. Like Ben King, the personal assistant, who did seem very credible. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He said that she said to him on that plane something like, have you ever got so mad that you lost control or something like that? Right. I never said that. But he said you did. And he seems very credible.
Seems like a very, very credible person.
Yeah. If it's just one instance, but she did it a lot.
Right.
And then, under oath, which is what the trial in the UK was, just like here. Mm-hmm. Our legal system comes from Britain. Yeah, very much so. She said that she donated $3.5 million to a children's hospital in ACLU. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we see this long, and this was one of the worst moments for her that I think in the whole trial. It's this fight between her and Johnny Depp's attorney. Right. And she's like, I pledged it. Mm-hmm. Did you actually donate it? No, yeah, I pledged it. But did you donate it? Yes, I did pledge it. It's like, what? I'm using donate.
It's like, did you write the check or did you just say you were going to write the check? No, I pledged it, so you said you were going to write the check. Did you actually write the check? Well, I said I was going to write it.
Right, I pledged it. Are you not listening to me?
And how many times she had to rephrase it?
Apparently, the ACLU did confirm that she's actually given them $1.3 million out of the 3.5.
So math isn't her strong suit either. Yeah. So I felt like that was that's where you just say, I meant to send the money, but then I got sued. Mm-hmm. Your client's a jerk. He sued me.
Or I pledged it and I allow my accountants to take care of the physical work of doing that. I told them that was a thing. So I'm not sure whether it's been paid or not. That's a way of handling it. You can pass the buck off to somebody else. Yeah. If you got millions of dollars, you got a financial planner. You got accountants. You can just be like, I have my accountant do it, or my manager, or something like that. And
It does make you wonder why it takes so long. Like, she had it for 13 months before she was sued, something like that, right? Why were you waiting? Just seems weird.
Yeah.
Like, just if you have it, you get it, donate it.
Makes one really doubt the intentions there and really kind of, she's circling around the question. I pledged it. Did you donate? I pledged it. Circling around the question and didn't actually happen. There for 13 months and makes the observer really doubt. And the credibility goes down.
It hurt her a lot.
Right.
It was an unforced error. It was real easy. I mean, Johnny Depp sued her. She could have used that opportunity to make him look vindictive. And instead, she made herself look like a liar.
Yeah, right.
And then she said, I used the word synonymously, pledge and donate. It's like, what? They're completely different words.
I'm going to pledge my student loans to be paid, and that'll just have to be good enough. I pledged it, so they're gone, right?
I mean, to a point, to an extent, I can see where people can conflate those two words, especially if you've watched the PBS pledge drive.
Yeah.
For those people who pledge, $20, you get this, nifty handbag. Like, okay. Well, to pledge $20 means to make sure you're going to give it, to donate it. But there's still different words. There's a difference between saying I'm going to do something, i.e. making the pledge, and actually doing the thing.
I'm still waiting on a mug from WHYY, I think. Still wait. This has been years now. At this point, I think I just need to go down there, figure out where it's at. Maybe
Just go down there and tell them, hey, I want it. It was from the 2003 pledge drive. I called in.
And I've been waiting ever
I want this
since.
mug. Like, where is it?
Someday I'll donate it.
It's like, no, I don't want a 2022 mug. I want the 2003 one that I paid for with my donation.
With my pledge, right?
Yeah,
My pledge. Same
I made
thing,
the I made the pledge, right? Not an actual donation. You made the pledge.
Let's not get them confused.
Yeah, so that was a pretty bad move for her. I think cross-examination went surprisingly terrible for Amber. Yeah.
I don't know how many people were surprised, though.
I wasn't surprised by how bad it went.
I thought she'd be better prepared. And have some acting skills.
That's fair.
I thought she was an actress for a living.
Well, I mean, she's not a great actress.
No, she proved that.
I mean, she does have certain assets that she brings before the screen, but it is not her speaking that is valued most.
Yeah, probably the physical attractiveness, right? I mean,
I thought you were talking about like her teeth or something. Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What else would I be referring to? Also her ankles.
Her ankles,
She
right.
has very nice ankles.
maybe better as a model than as an actress, right? If it's all just about looking pretty, yeah. But the speaking parts, which actors do have to do sometimes, you have to talk
Well,
on occasion.
depends.
They're lucky.
Charlie Chaplin didn't have to. Just saying.
Silent movie stars exempt from that. Although I think they actually still did talk, just you couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So, yeah. So that put her in a bad way. And we saw a number of kind of other witnesses, kind of like this weird battle with the psychiatrists that was just bizarre. Psychiatry is kind of a interesting profession. It's a very small group of people that their training doesn't have a lot of therapy part to it. It's mostly chemistry. And they're very important.
They're physicians.
Yeah, they're very important. There's some mental illnesses that only respond to drugs, or drugs are a massive part. But most mental illnesses, counseling is the way to go because it's free of side effects.
Right. And psychiatrists, last time I was looking into it, which was 2018, I think, there was only 12,000.
I think
12,500 psychiatrists in the entire country.
I think one of them said that, was it Shaw? I think he said that there was 37 or 38,000 members of the American Psychiatric Association. I'm not sure all of them are psychiatrists.
Not all of them are psychiatrists. Right. So there's a lot of psychologists in there too.
And probably counselors, social workers. Anybody can join those associations.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, in leadership roles, they're probably restricted to mostly MDs because that's their thing. But yeah, it's kind of it's a profession that was really heavily based on both chemistry and Freud, and to some extent the neo-Freudians, Eric Erikson, a couple others, but they never really moved. In my opinion, I'm painting a whole field here, but there's exceptions, but as a field, they never really moved much off of psychoanalysis because they're not therapists.
Right.
So they missed Aaron Beck, Albert Ellis, Albert Bandura, Glasser, everybody involved with Gestalt, like Fritz Perls. They missed that whole segment, and almost like, those are PhDs or whatever. Even though some of those are actually MDs, but
Completely missed Michael White, David Epstein. Narrative
systems theory. You can
anything
narrative and all that is they wouldn't worry about any of that. Anything tied in with family therapy or solution focused or narrative. Or,
I mean, when we get down to it, psychiatrists, by and large, they start with an undergrad in biology because they're intending to go towards physician. Go into biology and pre-med and then to med school. And some of them do go into med school and I'm going to be a psychiatrist. Like this is my goal. I'm going to get there and be there. And then there's a lot of them who are just like kind of like step down to it.
Right.
Because they like, I'm going to be a surgeon. I don't have the hands for surgery. I'm going to be internal medicine. Oh, that's way too much study. I'm going to be psychiatry. I'm going to be a specialist. I'm going to do psychiatry.
Yeah. And that happens with a lot of physicians. They end up in a different specialty. But I think that, when you don't start out necessarily knowing that you're interested in mental health, it's just a different mindset when you get to the final destination.
Right.
Most of the classes that they end up taking for the psychology side of things are it's equivalent to what you get in an undergrad with BS in psychology, which doesn't give you a whole lot. And in some cases, it's even less than that.
And to be fair, I don't think they really should waste their time because they spend their life in 5-minute appointments writing scripts.
Yeah.
And it's necessary.
Right.
Like it really is important.
Absolutely.
And they're very valuable.
Absolutely. I wouldn't denigrate any psychiatrist because they are absolutely necessary. And the fact that there is only, a limited number of them, whether it's 12,000 or 40,000, that's still to service 300 million people.
Well, that's a drop in the bucket compared to counseling, social work.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, medication is very important for many, many people who are need mental health help.
Or in association with, doing counseling and
Absolutely.
medication management.
I work in conjunction with psychiatric nurse practitioners and psychiatrists to get proper medication management for many clients. And I think it's very valuable, but you're right. They don't do hour-long, psychotherapy. They do 5-minute check-ins. Yeah. Sometimes like one day a week, they do hour-long intakes. And then every other day, it's like 5-minute check-ins on their established patients. So how are things going? Do you need refill? Things aren't, no change. Okay, well, we'll change this up. We need this done. And then they're on to the next client because medical school student loans are hugely expensive.
Yeah, they need to make money.
They need to make as much money as possible. And the insurance companies are the ones paying them, so they need to do volume.
So I find it interesting because with this case, you're talking about mostly alleged personality problems. Not the strong suit of psychiatry in general, right? Personality theory. I would say more in the wheelhouse of mental health counselors and psychologists, and to some extent, marriage and family therapists would be very good at that. A psychiatrist would really have to go out of their way, distant from chemistry and study additional resources to learn that subject.
Right.
But look, they're technically qualified, and they're often sought out for court cases where there's a lot of money to throw around. It's so, like this one, it seems like, pretty much the lawyers are saying, what's the most we can pay for somebody? These guys are making $1,000 an hour for this, right? So they're really just burning money, and really they could have gone with any number of other types of professionals for a lot cheaper and probably got maybe some better service in some areas.
Or even the same quality for that matter. Yeah.
But let's be honest, the attorneys are leaning into the perceived expertise bias.
Right.
Like they're counting on the jurors to look at this and look at the credentials this person has and give them more credibility. I mean, our average juror is not going to know the difference between the education levels of a psychiatrist and a counselor. They're just going to see, oh, that counselor only has a master's degree, but that psychiatrist has a doctorate. I know doctorates are higher than master's degrees, so the psychiatrist must know what they're doing, more than this counselor,
Right.
and that's an issue, as it's not true.
Well, and also it comes down to experience in the field, what you do, your specialty. Many counselors have a PhD. There's great social workers and marriage and family therapists out there. Like, there's a lot of choices. But yeah, for a big money trial, it's pretty much only going to be psychiatrist and psychologist.
Right.
Now, to be fair, those two fields tend to specialize in forensic work more so than a lot of other fields. That's changing now.
Right.
Anybody can be a forensic psychotherapist.
Right.
With a master's, with a license, PhD with a license. Anybody can join and meet the requirements. And plenty do. But you probably won't see them in the trials where the big money is being spent.
Right. Which is why this game of one professional trying to discredit the other professional, or having multiple professionals coming in for the other side and saying why this other person is not qualified or does not have the expertise or does not have the experience to talk about whatever they talked about, or has not seen the person long enough or at all to talk about whatever it is they talked about, because it is a huge part of many trials. Why this person's not right, why this person's right, and the back and forth that goes on for days.
And often it's a matter of perspective. It's what one person sees over what another person sees. But as you talked about Richard Shaw talking about Dr. Spiegel, what he brought up was actually way more important. The Goldwater Rule.
Let's get to the Goldwater Rule, but I want to touch on one thing first. You were saying, Jeff, I find it funny because you're right. These professionals are attacking each other on their credentials and their education and their integrity and all these things. And if you look across mental health professionals of all types, right, and both at the PhD, the PsyD, the other doctoral levels like EDD, some like different education degrees, it's EDD. And then you go down to masters and look at all that. There's not much difference between them. We're all studying the same thing. There's no magic textbook that you can only get to as a psychiatrist or as a social worker or whatever. Like, it's just a question of what mixture do you want.
And everybody's got to take continuing education units to maintain licensure. So, and you're all in the same classes.
Now I'm picturing a hidden room somewhere. You get handed that PhD degree.
He knows where it is.
And you get a key to this hidden room. And there's
a glow.
It's glowing. Right. There's angels in there.
I can't look directly at it.
He's
Cover
got
my
the
eyes.
key.
Right.
He's got the key.
And there's a magic book in there, and your mind is enlightened. That's what I'm picturing right now.
Well, you remember the silver room when we got our master's degrees.
Yep,
we got the silver keys.
Come on. They're listening.
Oh,
can't tell.
Sorry about that.
Forget I said anything.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, so I find it interesting that they attack each other with such vigor when, all the professionals are pretty close to the same. Mm-hmm. It's the only thing I could really say that would offer a distinction is years experience. Right. But I would certainly, somebody having good quality experience, I would take that over, the one extra class that somebody took post-grad or whatever. Like, experience is the way to go. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's... I don't know if the jury's falling for it, but they are kind of going at each other. So let's go to the Goldwater Rule then.
Yeah, that's the ethical standard adopted by the American Psychological Association. It says that...
Psychiatric. It's American Psychiatric.
Is it the psychiatric?
Yeah.
No, just the article I have here says psychological.
Yeah, it's definitely the APA, the psychiatric version of the APA.
Okay. But in the ethics rule book, it says that members shouldn't offer... official psychological opinions and professional opinions on people they haven't personally examined and met with.
And don't have permission to release the statement.
Right. Yeah. So Johnny Depp never met with Dr. Spiegel. Like, he refused the invitations and refused to...
Yeah, there's confusion on
meet
that.
with him.
Spiegel said he refused, but then it sounds like the court wouldn't order it.
Oh.
So it's not, I'm assuming Depp refused, but technically the court said no. And probably because his side petitioned for that, but that was never stated, as far as I know.
Whether or not it was the court or Depp who chose to not order it, Spiegel didn't meet with him, didn't sit in the same room with him.
No, never met him personally.
Never met him personally, but still testified under oath that he had a narcissistic personality and withering cognitive abilities.
Yeah, and I think at one point, I don't know if it was on redirect, but if I'm not mistaken, he said the term severe substance use disorder. And I think he actually corrected the attorney. Like the attorney said, does he have substance use disorder? And he said severe. And I'm like, you're doubling down on...
Yeah, you're doubling down on making it. That's a diagnostic thing. Like there's different levels of substance use disorder in the DSM, and technically it would be a specific substance, because there's no overarching substance use disorder in the DSM.
We don't use that.
It would be cocaine use disorder, severe.
Right.
It would be what you would say. That would be the classification.
And if it was cocaine and heroin and ecstasy, it's separate diagnosis.
Each one is a different.
There's no more polysubstance. You could get away with that in DSM-4. Well, actually, what was it? DSM-4, and there was DSM-4-TR. In one of the versions, it was polysubstance abuse, I think. Yeah. But then abuse and dependence was thrown out.
I think they threw dependence
and
abuse.
DSM-4 to 4-TR. That was then 4-TR. You had to say the cocaine use disorder, alcohol use disorder. And there was no more, like, you couldn't just say, polysubstance.
In the 4, they got rid of the dependency, but it was still abuse. And in 5, they changed it to use.
I think both were use.
Was it?
I think it was 4TR and 5 is use. But I find it interesting because I've done, a lot of supervision in my career. And when you're working with a population that does a lot of substances, and I know you have certainly done that, you have some experience in that, it gets very difficult when you're constrained with intakes, like to an hour and a half, to list all those diagnoses. So clinicians, would often come to me and I'd be like, what's going on? Oh, the guy's using heroin, cocaine, PCP is a rare one, bath salts, alcohol.
Cannabis.
Marijuana, and 5 or 6 others. And you look at the diagnosis, like major depressive disorder, polysubstance abuse. That's it? We're just, polysubstance. Like, I'm saving all this time. I'm like, nah, take this back and write each one.
Yeah.
Very often, if I'm writing a note, I'll just talk about it as substance use disorder in the body of the note. But when it comes to the diagnoses, it's like every one of them comes out. Like if it's heroin and alcohol and cocaine, it's heroin, opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder, cocaine use disorder. And if it's like ecstasy and MDMA, it's like hypnotic and sedative use disorder. Right? It is very specific, and to correct the lawyer with something that's actually incorrect when you still haven't met the person you're making this, clinical diagnostic opinion of. That's just
and a huge part of substances is remission status.
Yeah.
Right, partial,
absolutely.
Full,
early remission, partial remission.
Yeah, if you don't know that, you don't really know anything about the client.
Yeah,
and he was just like, substance use disorder,
severe substance use disorder. Okay, but is it? It's which substance? Like, is it cocaine use disorder, early remission? Alcohol use disorder, not in remission.
It doesn't give us a picture at all of what he's experiencing, has experienced, or currently experiencing, mainly because he doesn't know.
Right. He's never
doesn't know. Right. He's never known. And he said he with a high degree of medical certainty or a degree of medical certainty.
Reasonable degree.
Something
like that,
Yeah. Which, again, doubling down. Right?
And the Goldwater Rule is why we often, and I know in your other videos you always say, like, I'm not diagnosing anybody. And we say, like, I've never met this person, so I don't know. I'm just speculating. Speculation is okay. And we're not giving a clinical opinion on any of these things.
No.
But Dr. Spiegel was. But he's never met Johnny Depp.
I'm actually not a fan of the Goldwater Rule because I think it's antiquated. But I do appreciate the part of it where they're like, you can't know what's happening with a specific person, right? There's a lot of it that doesn't make sense. Like, they don't enforce it, for one thing. Like, period. So why have it? That's bizarre to me. Like, we have this rule, but if you don't follow it, We'll say, please follow it. What if I don't follow it then? We'll say, please follow it again. We'll say it as many times as we need to. Okay.
Like, right. Some of the way the APA deals with their ethics was just odd. Like you have a big ethics violation and it'll be like, but please follow it. I mean, it's ethics.
Work it out amongst yourselves. That's what they say.
There's other things that, of course, like you're losing your license for that immediately. Sleeping with your patients. Rule number 1, right? First thing that he told us, day 1 of supervision, like, don't sleep with your patients. Yeah. You lose your license off of that one. That's great. You recreate the Milgram experiment. Watch how quick the ethics comes down on you. But, you talk about somebody officially in court that you've never met, and there's like...
Yeah. Well, I mean, with Donald Trump, right, it seems like, I think it's fair to say, there could be some type of narcissism situation. I don't know for sure, but it sure looks like it. Mm-hmm. But it was like 72 psychiatrists or whatever all banded together behind, I think it was Bandy Lee, was the psychiatrist. And they're like, he definitely has NPD or something. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but they were very vocal.
Right.
And
Adamant,
pretty much said, it's like, yeah, APA is not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, good luck. Like, we're standing up to prevent this guy from being dangerous or whatever. And then the APA just was like, oh, that's very bad. Moving on.
Next case.
Oh, okay.
Maybe the only reason they keep it there is for court hearings. So that
so they get paid $1,000 an hour to fight about it.
Right. So that two professionals can just argue back and forth, getting paid $1,000 an hour to argue about rules that nobody enforces, for the sake of bringing it up in court.
And it's literally, it's based on a 1964, it was Goldwater, Barry Goldwater, I think it was, right? Ran for president, and Fact magazine sent out a survey to psychiatrists saying, is this guy mentally ill? And thousands wrote back and said he is, paranoid, schizophrenic, and all this stuff. And Goldwater sued and won. And then the rule went into effect in 1973. So it's a almost 50-year-old rule. But again, I do agree with the general idea.
To be fair on how long it took them to get from the lawsuit to ethics, like in 1973 was when they adopted a code of ethics in the first place. It was the very first code of ethics that APA adopted.
To be fair, right? Yeah.
To be fair, so they didn't have anything before that. So yeah.
Well, they don't really have anything now, except a document.
Right.
Right. How good must clients feel, right? Like you're protected because I follow this code. Well, I don't really have to follow it, and nothing will happen if I don't follow it. But you should know that I have once looked at the code.
I learned about it in school.
I read part of it.
I learned when I joined the APA, they sent me a copy of it, and it's on my coffee table. Mm-hmm. Well, under my coffee, it's actually buried in amongst the magazines that I keep under the coffee table. I mean,
there's a few spills on it.
So I used it to hold my coffee once, and there's a ring around it, but that ring is around the Goldwater Rule. So
that's how I know it.
That's how I know it because I read it there.
I all but circled it on the paper.
I mean, I think it's funny that they still call it the Goldwater Rule. They could have dropped that part, but it kind of gives it the respect that they have for it, that it being gold water. And just kind of pee all over it.
Well, I'm sure that, to be fair, I'm sure the psychiatrists follow some other rules, like really do follow them. Mm-hmm.
With an ethics code, it's adopted by the group. Like it's a people have to choose to follow it, and their organizations can do things about certain breaches, but others there's very little they can do.
It's challenging to convince a group of professionals who have gone to school to get a master's, a PhD, an MD, whatever, to create rules to wipe out people from that profession. So you spend all this money, $100,000, $200,000, and no one wants to get jammed up for some technicality. Mm-hmm. So it's really just largely suggestion. Please follow this. And that's no more evident than in this case here.
Right.
So you both saw Spiegel, this testimony, right? I kind of felt bad for the guy because, well, first of all, he did not know what gaslighting was, no matter what he says. I don't believe for a second he knew what it was. But that's okay, because that's kind of like, he has fairly constricted group. It sounds like he works with a lot of inpatient. You're not going to, he has some outpatient too, I guess, but he's pretty busy.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt that he's up on narcissism as a construct.
Right.
I think too, though, whenever, millions of people are watching, and he wasn't good in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. And that matters, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does.
I think he kind of...
I mean, of all the testimony that I've heard in the case, most of the most gaslighting statements that I heard came from some of the tapes, and it was coming from Amber Heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're not going to believe you. Nobody's going to believe you. You're Johnny Depp. You think they're going to believe you that
a man
is an abuse victim?
That was terrible for her.
That was awful. Like that, but that's gaslighting right there. And then there's the you just run away from these fights. You're just running away. Mm-hmm. Like you run away before we can find a solution. Like that's putting the whole thing on him. That's the gaslighting. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, strictly speaking, right? It's like when she made him seem like he was the problem, which is what she's getting at is like you're the one that's victimizing me as I victimize you. Like what?
I wouldn't follow you through the house to 5 different rooms if you would stop running away from me.
It's like, don't make me hit you.
Right.
Type of thing. Yeah. That was the gaslighting. And I think Amber really got jammed up in that. And there was another part where she was, please don't leave. You're killing me. I'm dying. Like, wow, I mean, physically, when you're hearing her, you can just picture yourself wanting to run away from her. Mm-hmm. Like, and really feel sorry for Johnny Depp.
Yeah. If someone's going to make you feel that bad about yourself continuously, you wouldn't run away from that.
But remember, she was trying to save his life from some mysterious drug den that he was walking into, where his children were. Like, what?
How nice of her.
Yeah, apparently his children just hang out in drug dens. And he goes to visit them so that they can all do drugs together.
It's weird.
Something.
Yeah.
And that's where some inconsistencies come up in her stories all over the place. And one of the things that she talked about was the cavity search. How like Johnny had been out of his gourd trying to find his cocaine stash.
Yeah.
And he thought she took it, and he was like, "We're going to do a cavity search." And
that was the trailer, right? There was
in the trailer, and in the middle of that, she stops.
Pretty trailers, fancy trailers.
In the middle of that, she stops and she goes, "Oh, he said that I took his cocaine. Why would I take his cocaine? I don't do cocaine. I'm completely against cocaine. Why would I take his cocaine?" And I'm like, you're sitting here telling us like at certain points that
emotional story
that you're trying to get him out of drug use. You're trying to protect him and save his life from all this drug use. But then in the same breath, essentially you want to tell us that you have no reason whatsoever to take his cocaine when he's in the middle of the cocaine, because even though you're completely against the cocaine, you wouldn't touch it when you're trying to save his life. Absolutely you would. And that's another area where I think that she kind of didn't learn the lessons of Abuse Victim 101. Right? If your abusive spouse or partner is really abusive when they're drinking alcohol, the first thing you do is try and get rid of all the alcohol in the house, because then they're not going to be as abusive. It's going to cause a whole bunch of other issues, but still, that's one of the first things you do. If she had said, "Yeah, I got rid of that cocaine that day because I didn't want him using, and I thought it was going to be a big issue if he used," I'd have really been with her on that. I've been like, okay, that sounds very reasonable, but she made a point to go, I wouldn't take his cocaine. Why would I do that? There's no reason for me to do that.
Perfection. Again, she's not giving an inch. Mm-hmm. She's perfect.
Right. And she made it about herself at that point, how she couldn't do that.
And yeah, but she used, later she admitted to using mushrooms. That is a drug, psychedelic, and ecstasy.
That was the same day where her dog stepped on a bee.
Oh, there you go.
Oh man, if only I'd been a vet, I could have been flown in special.
There you go.
To deal with that.
$1,000 an hour. Mm-hmm.
Oh, but TikTok got a huge reaction to the I stepped on a bee thing from her, because like it just her whole emote during that whole thing was just it was jarringly off. Like it wasn't like a lead up to like, yeah, we had to take my animal to the vet, and he stepped on a bee, and like a buildup of emotion in that. She was just like, yeah, my dog stepped on a bee, and then immediately gone, and like back into telling the story.
It was a passing thought.
Right. It was like
just attached onto another story, which was weird.
Right. And just it was weird. And TikTok went whole hog on just mocking that whole exchange completely.
Music videos, in multiple languages. Yeah.
And just like doing rhyming poems with it. Like they have her saying like, my dog stepped on a bee, and then somebody else will like, I lost my house key. There's some good compilations out there. It's really, really funny. But
there's a lot of good songs just about this case in general. I heard one the other day about it was called Objection Hearsay, and it different parts from the trial. This was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but different parts from the trial, and it's some funny things. I mean, the trial lends itself to a lot of humor because you can take those small things like that moment with Amber Heard, and you take it out of context, and it's just a funny face that she was making, or funny things that people are saying or doing, or genuinely stupid things where you're like, I don't know where you got that from, and then somebody makes it into a song, and it's internet gold. Like it lends itself to so many areas of the internet. My
other issue with Amber is a completely different thing. My other issue with her goes back to her acting ability. Like she's not emoting like at all realistically. She's not putting any emotion into it. And I've worked with a lot of people with a lot of deep trauma who have been in rehab after rehab after rehab and have talked about their trauma so much that it has virtually no impact on them at all. And they still have more emotion in their voice when they're talking about the things that were done to them than Amber Heard does on the stand. Like she just, it's like completely flat.
Yeah, it's too, she's too flexible, right? Like she can change directions in just an instant and not be sad, not be happy. She goes from like, oh, he was magic to just matter of fact statements. Like, well, how do you do that? Like, where's the gradual nature of emotions, like the buildup, like you're talking about? There's no buildup. It's just instant on, instant off. It's a switch. And if she only had some type of acting training, that's all I can think of would have helped there. But
I don't know.
Like if it was a profession or like something like that, like
if she could get professional help in acting somewhere,
yeah,
or I don't know. I hope she doesn't decide to want to become a movie star.
It's a wrong career choice based on what we've seen.
Wrong career choice, definitely.
And based on the results from the movie she's been in, I think too, seems to be the wrong choice.
Right.
Yeah, Aquaman, I know it was successful, but
it was not successful because of Amber Heard.
No. But Aquaman is kind of like, there's been jokes about like it's kind of like the not the best superhero, right? I mean, it's like swims like a fish and talks like a fish.
You get down back to the Super Friends Aquaman portrayal.
The orange.
The orange. Like that definitely was it. But Jason Momoa in Aquaman, it was badass.
So like
I really love that.
So like the superheroes in outer space, Aquaman, Justice League thing. He's got the thing on. You're like, what am I doing here? What, can you guys take care of this? Like,
why am I here? Is there a space whale that I need to talk to? Like up here?
It's a space fish somewhere that I missed. Like
you guys couldn't handle one fight on the moon. I got the entire ocean. Like it's the biggest thing on Earth. I got to take care of that whole thing. You deal with the moon. I don't care. Johnny Depp's reactions, though, watching him just definitely highlights the difference between the two of them. Like we talked about in the last video, where like they were playing one of the audio tapes, and Johnny like sat there, he had his eyes closed, and was listening intently to what was happening, and Amber was just kind of doodling or whatever. Like she wasn't paying attention to his testimony either. But I saw moments where when Amber Heard was doing her testimony, where Johnny had that exact same expression, where he was leaned forward, he had his eyes closed, he was listening intently to what she was saying. Mm-hmm. He was giving attention to her words and her story. And to some point, I'm sure that was so that he could, tell his lawyer where, that didn't happen.
Well, today he made it pretty clear, right, on the end of him being questioned by his attorney on the rebuttal, the direct, where he said it's insane, ridiculous, ludicrous, savage, brutal, cruel, like just on and on. He said ridiculous and ludicrous. I feel like he could have dropped one of those. But either way, he's expressive and artistic.
If you go by Spaceballs,
Right.
ridiculous, ludicrous comes
Let's
after
go to ludicrous
ridiculous.
speed.
Yeah. Ludicrous comes after ridiculous. Yeah.
He's gone plaid.
They've gone to plaid.
That was a great movie.
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
If you like
Mel
pretty
Brooks.
much any
Mel Brooks.
but any sci-fi like Star Wars, it had some kind of a Battlestar Galactica feel at parts of it, but directly, it was based on Star Wars. Had Alien in there, and a few other things. Yeah, at the end, spoiler alert for Spaceballs.
Spoiler alert for Spaceballs.
Yeah,
it's only been out since the 1980s.
Dark Helmet. I can't hear with this thing.
Rick Moranis is Dark Helmet.
There's no better scene though than the Schwartz rings.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like that was like perfection. Yeah.
The greatest scene in that movie was the Vulcan neck pinch scene. He's like, no, it's further down where the shoulder meets the neck. Like here? Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah, and Star Trek, right? Yeah, Star Trek, mostly Star Wars, Star Trek. I feel like maybe a little bit of Battlestar Galactica, not directly. Aliens. Any other things they threw in there? Was a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's
Space
a lot.
Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
Was that like at least the feel of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the Winnebago too. Like, yeah. All right.
The merchandising of everything. That was a subtle jab at George Lucas, who actually gave them permission to do the stuff.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. If in the very end there's the scene at the space diner, and you have the Winnebago park there. The Millennium Falcon's actually parked on there too, and has been since the very first cut. And that was because George Lucas said, like, yeah, you can use that.
Nice.
In fact, some of the footage used at the end where the escape pod, spoiler alert, escape pods are going out of Spaceball 1. That's actually recycled footage used that was never used in the original Star Wars. They shot it and then didn't use it. It was on the cutting room floor. So George Lucas gave it to them and said, here you go.
He's always been a sport when it comes to his work, like allowing people to do like derivative work and all that. That's a part of Star Wars. I know a lot of people don't like him, but George Lucas made a massive contribution to society with Star Wars.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That shows in its behavior, like you said.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Johnny Depp was never in a Star Wars movie. Fortunately, Amber Heard was never in a Star Wars movie.
I doubt she will be now. So it's today wrapped up with working on the rebuttal. And again, Amber Heard still has her rebuttal coming up tomorrow. But I felt like Johnny was, again, I don't think any money's changing hands, but in terms of reputational points, I feel like he's winning.
Yeah. I don't know how he could, unless there's something that no one's ever heard before in this trial comes about. I don't think there's any way that that would shift, that it would change from him on the winning side to Amber on the winning side. I just don't see that shifting at all.
You'd have to find out something massively horrible about him. And let's face it, the jury's half asleep by now.
Yeah.
So Amber's team would have brought it up if they had something.
I think you'd have to have Stanley Kubrick come back from the grave and sit on the stand and be like, everything you heard, from Johnny's side, I directed that. Amber's a brilliant actress, but everything you've heard from her is absolute 100% truth. I think like that's the only thing that would be able to get away with it, because Stanley Kubrick faked everything.
Yeah, maybe like Amber pulls a mask off and she's Johnny Depp, and Johnny pulls a mask off as Amber. It's like, what? We've had this completely wrong.
Scooby-Doo comes in. He's like, we would have gotten away with this if it wasn't for
meddling kids.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like a Mission Impossible moment if that happens with the face thing. So
That's true.
That could.
Or somebody that pulls out pictures.
No, if somebody's pulling a face off, Tom Cruise is going to be underneath.
Somebody's pulling
They're
out.
both Tom Cruise. It's like,
They're both Tom Cruise.
Somebody like pulls out pictures. Actually, you know what? I just found out that Johnny killed 12 people, and he's abused everyone in the world, and right. So here's all the pictures and this magical evidence that comes out at the end of the trial. I mean, I just don't see that happening though.
Then people all over the world will be like, how did I not remember when Johnny showed up and abused me? Like, abused everybody in the world.
How did I not remember?
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that he's going to start getting, his reputation is going to regain. He's going to start getting movie roles again. And I think that hers is already just taking a nosedive.
Yeah. Well, the pendulum always swings one way and then back the other. And I think this case exemplifies that, where many people were inclined to believe Amber. Right? Just, she made very serious
Right.
allegations. And, a few years ago, I think Johnny would have been in trouble with that, and he was.
He was. And I think the London lawsuit was kind of what brought a lot of people onto Amber Heard's side and against Johnny Depp. What a lot of people didn't understand was his suit wasn't against Amber Heard. It was against the newspaper.
The Sun. Yeah.
And all the newspaper had to show that wasn't libel was that they had a reasonable belief that what they were told was true. And the judge found that there was significant enough evidence to say that the Sun believed what she
12 of 14 points. It was a devastating ruling for Depp.
Yeah.
But technically, it's actually easier to prove defamation in the United Kingdom. So it's a big hurdle. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's no way. If that jury gives him money, I mean, I would fall out of my chair. There's no basis that I can find in the law for that.
And just to be on the safe side, like when you hear that's coming, just put some pillows on the ground around you, like just make sure. I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen, but hey, better safe than sorry.
Safety first.
Safety first. That's right.
And the hoax thing, where like his attorney said that Amber was perpetrating a hoax. Well, first of all, that kind of sounds like opinion, hyperbole. Like all attorneys say their client didn't do it. I'm not really sure that's the basis. It can be a basis for a lawsuit. I guess it can be a basis, but I can't see it winning. But also, like today, Johnny Depp distanced himself from that comment by saying it looks like word salad. I was like, oh, probably not the best thing to say with the history of drug use. Yeah. Like I imagine many things have looked like word salad to Johnny Depp. But he kind of just distanced himself from
probably after he took some mushrooms.
Right.
Everything looked like word salad.
Yeah, so that's where we are. I think that I feel like he's winning, and no matter what happens, with the verdict, I think he achieved probably what he wanted to. Yeah. And I really got that feeling today from the end of his testimony. We kind of suggested that no matter what happens, I've spoken up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go. So, any last thoughts on this update, day 22?
What just came to mind was when all the jurors can finally access the internet and access all the stuff about this, I think they're going to be really mad that they missed all of the parodies and the songs and the and everything.
They're going to be like 22 days behind all of this stuff.
22 days behind the internet. Imagine that, right? All the stuff that the internet came out with in 22 days, and you've missed it. So they're going to have to take probably months off of their, like just take off from work or whatever they do, and just like memes, TikTok, videos, everything.
The problem is you can't get that time back.
Right. It's a shame.
Like the internet, the internet will have moved on by then. Like
there'll be another big thing.
We'll get right now. The internet is like laser focused on this trial. It's like everything's here. But as soon as there's a verdict, we're on to something else.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
It'll be like, okay, well now it's a slow news day. Moving on.
It's like when Brian Laundrie was found, or even before he was found.
Yeah.
It packed up and.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, they're looking for him. Oh, they don't think he's alive. I want to get out of here.
Yeah. No more sensationalism stuff. Yeah. So I think the jurors are the real victims here.
Well, I've said before that Teacup Yorkie, also a victim.
Got blamed for
was badly defamed with that incident.
There's defamation right there. Mm-hmm. I guess the Yorkie was the one who defecated in the bed. No, that wasn't the Yorkie.
Defecation, defamation. Yeah.
That was definitely some defamation right there.
I hope that Yorkie can afford these expensive attorneys.
and mental health professionals and $1,000 an hour. That could be a whole nother trial, I guess.
That Yorkie is histrionic.
Yorkie against Amber Heard. It's going to be the next bit. That's what's going to the internet's going to move on to.
All right. Any final thoughts, Mike?
Just like honestly, I'll be glad when it's over. There are certain news stories that capture attention and keep going and just keep going. And for a while, it's great. It captures attention and just keeps you there. But then after a little bit longer, it's just I don't want to hear any more about it. I don't want to look at this. I don't want to see this anymore. It's too much in my face. There are other things going on in the world that are very important that need attention. So can we move off of this? So I'll be glad when it's over. But if it goes on for a little bit longer, it might become more interesting again. That's the Seth MacFarlane rule of comedy, right? Like something starts out funny and you keep going with it until it becomes annoying, and then you keep going with it until it comes back around again and becomes funny once again. Maybe that's what'll happen if the trial keeps going. But at this point, I'm just like, I want it to be over. Like I try to be objective when looking at it, but I've heard enough to make up my own personal opinion. And like you said, I don't think either one of them deserves dime one from the other because their relationship was toxic. But it does highlight that men can be abuse victims too. It's a very important thing, and that the Aquaman franchise will survive without Amber Heard.
Yeah, I think it really just showed that there's two sides to the story, and now Johnny got to tell his side, and now that he has, I think people are like, oh, okay, that he has a good point. But isn't that always the way, right? If you listen to the prosecution's case in a criminal trial, you're gonna be like, he's guilty. Then you listen to the defense, you're like, now I'm not so sure.
Right.
So now, we were only hearing Amber Heard's side, and now we heard Johnny's, and it's like, okay, he's got some good points, no question. And she's lied, sort of by her own admission, although she's still like, pledge is the same thing as donate. Okay.
I'm half convinced that some of her hard truths that she puts out there, and they're 90% truth and 10% holding back on details that change the entire context of it.
Yeah. It's like she doesn't understand how people feel or empathize. Like she can't sit in their seat, like in the jury seats, and then think about, okay, how are they going to react? It's like, again, it just comes down to acting, I feel like. And maybe you can't act very well if you can't empathize. Maybe that's where the problem is. All right. So we'll wrap up there with this update. This was pretty much the whole trial through day 22. And we'll have to do at least one more.
Yeah.
When this is all over, maybe next week, or I don't know, like when this will end.
You do it. Maybe you do a short update.
Right. Let's see. We'll see if we were right in our predictions. So this has been an episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Thank you so much for watching. We'll keep working on videos, and please keep the ideas coming in the comments section. We'll talk to you soon.